Center for Health Protection warns winter flu season could peak next month. 3 dead hostages found by Israel as the U.S. calls for more protection of civilians in Gaza. Hello and welcome to TVB News. The Center for Health Protection said the winter flu season could reach a peak next month. The warning came after several respiratory viruses had been detected in Hong Kong. Mimo Singhai reports.
Winter is often the peak season for influenza due to the low temperatures and humidity. Vulnerable groups with weaker immune systems, such as children and the elderly, are more susceptible to infections. The number of children getting respiratory infections saw an increase in the past 2 weeks. Most of them caught rhinovirus and enterovirus, while the positive infection rate of Mycoplasma pneumoniae in the city remained at a low level in the past few months. Nonetheless, speaking to the press today, the Center for Health Protection warned residents about a peaking of winter flu as infection cases go up.
In recent 6 to 7 weeks, we noticed there's some rising trend of a couple of common respiratory infections, including parainfluenza and also the adenovirus. So at present, we still notice there are high proportions of rhinovirus and enterovirus infection in Hong Kong. And in view of the seasonal trend of these common respiratory infections, there is a certain risk that in winter times, the activity of these common infections will continue to rise.
The CHB also mentioned the number of people receiving flu vaccines. This year, 1.6 million vaccines have been administered, a 23% increase over the previous year. Among them, over 710,000 were received by people aged 65 or above. More students had received flu jabs under school support, with the highest increase rate for primary school pupils, followed by kindergarten students. But the vaccination rate of toddlers and infants is only 15%. The health authority said the figure is not satisfactory and urged parents to get their children vaccinated. News 9, TVB News.
The observatory predicts a cold front will move across the coast of southern China on Saturday morning. A cold weather warning will be issued tomorrow. It is almost Christmas, yet the weather is still warm. But the observatory says residents will experience cooler weather in the next few days. Winds and rain are expected to arrive in the city, leading to a massive drop in temperatures from 23 degrees Celsius on Saturday morning to 12 degrees in the urban areas tomorrow night. Residents in the new territories should expect a few degrees lower. The national security trial for Next Digital founder Jimmy Lai will take place at the West Kowloon Magistracy on Monday. This as Secretary for Security Chris Tang stressed the police will increase patrols around the premises and perform security screenings for all individuals entering the court. Lai faces 3 charges, including suspicion of conspiracy to collude with a foreign country or with external elements to endanger national security. Tang noted several people who attended previous hearings often disturbed prosecutors and made loud noises that affected legal proceedings. He emphasized he will take immediate and decisive action if such scenes are repeated in the upcoming trial. Meanwhile, the police said more than 1,000 officers will be deployed to ensure a smooth hearing on Monday. The Office of the Commissioner of China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the SAR criticized some U.S. and U.K. politicians for slandering the city's legal system after they voiced their objections to the city's pursuit of 5 overseas fugitives. The office stressed any attempts to interfere in the SAR's internal affairs will fail. Earlier, U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller and U.K. Foreign Secretary David Cameron both condemned the SAR government's efforts to bring in the fugitives, with the latter saying he will not tolerate the harassment of individuals in Britain. This as the Office of the Commissioner of China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Hong Kong said the police's actions ensure national security. Chief Executive John Lee will head to Beijing on Sunday for his second duty visit since taking office. Lee is expected to brief state leaders on Hong Kong's latest economic, social, and political situations. He will be accompanied by the director of the CE's office, Carol Yip, and Private Secretary Kevin Choi during the 4-day trip. During Lee's absence, Chief Secretary for Administration Eric Chan will be the acting chief executive. Meanwhile, Macau's chief executive Ho Yat-seng will also depart for Beijing for his annual duty visit on Sunday. Ho is expected to report on his work in 2023 and Macau's key policies for next year's. Overseas in Gaza, Israeli forces said 3 dead hostages have been found as they continue to push through the enclave. The government says the mission to wipe out Hamas could take months. Their key ally, the United States, has again told Israel to limit casualties. David Garrett reports.
Funerals on Friday in Gaza. The Hamas-run health ministry says 18,700 Palestinians have been killed in the war. Israel continued their intense pounding of Gaza overnight. They say their first objective is to recover hostages. 3 dead bodies were recovered, the Israeli military say. One was a 28-year-old taken from a concert, the other 2 were soldiers. The destruction caused is extensive. Some have described Israel's assault as indiscriminate. This father follows the corpse of his dead adult children from the hospital to the morgue. He is distraught. He says they were killed by Israeli forces. The casualty list grows by the day. US President Joe Biden, who supports Israel, said they must take more care.
By the end of the year, do you want them to tone it down, move to a lower intensity phase?
I want them to be focused on how to save civilian lives, not stop going after Hamas, but be more careful.
The latest US official to visit Israel was National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Before the meeting, the White House hoped Sullivan would try to shift their war into a new phase. Sullivan says talks were constructive.
Conversations take place first in a spirit of partnership. We're not here to tell anybody, you must do X, you must do Y. We're here to say, this is our perspective as your partner, as your friend. This is what we believe is the best way to achieve both your tactical and strategic goals. And then second, it has to take place in private because we can't telegraph for the enemy what the plan is.
In a recorded video after the meeting, Benjamin Netanyahu told Israelis he was more determined than ever to keep fighting.
נפגשתי היום עם ג'ייק סלוון.
Netanyahu said he told his American friends that they are not letting go of it, even for a moment. Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, in the US, protesters supporting Palestine sat across a freeway blocking traffic in the middle of the day. Police had to arrest and remove the demonstrators. The day before, the same thing had happened in Los Angeles, causing widespread disruption. And there are no signs of an Israeli slowdown. A ceasefire looks more remote than ever. As Israel released more footage of their offensive in Gaza, its defense minister says the war to destroy Hamas will take several months. David Garrett, TVB News.
Police arrested 3 people in coordinated actions across Denmark, and 1 person was detained in the Netherlands on suspicion of plotting to carry out an act of terror. Danish officials have stopped short of indicating that the suspected terror plots were connected, other than saying the arrests in Denmark had threats abroad and were related to criminal gangs. In Germany, authorities said 3 suspected members of Hamas, who were allegedly planning attacks on Jewish institutions in Europe, were arrested on Thursday. 2 men were arrested in Berlin and 1 in the Dutch city of Rotterdam, while a 4th suspect was temporarily detained in Berlin. The authorities allege 3 of the men have been long-standing members of Hamas and have participated in Hamas operations abroad. They said the suspects were closely linked to the military branch's leadership of Hamas, considered a terrorist organization by the United States and the European Union. It was not immediately clear if the Danish and the German arrests were connected. The British Foreign Secretary says those responsible for settler violence against Palestinians will be banned from entering Britain. It follows a similar policy by the EU. David Cameron announced the new government policy via social media. In calling for a ban, Cameron posted that violent settlers are undermining the security and stability for Israelis and Palestinians. UN figures show daily settler attacks in the Israeli-occupied West Bank have more than doubled since the war began. Still ahead, Russian leader vows to press ahead in war with Ukraine. A visit to a spectacular bridge near the mainland border. Welcome back to TVB News. European Union leaders decided to open negotiations on Ukraine's accession to the bloc at a summit in Brussels. However, in a blow to Kyiv, a €50 billion financial aid package that Ukraine desperately needs to defend against Russia's ongoing investigation was vetoed by Hungary. Daniel Rao tells us more.
The European Union has decided to open accession negotiations with Ukraine during a Brussels summit of the bloc's 27 leaders. The move marks a significant moment and stunning reversal for a country at war that had struggled to find the backing for its membership aspirations and long-faced obstinate opposition from Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Orban said his opposition remained steadfast but abstained during the vote. With the unanimous decision required by EU protocol, he decided to let his right to oppose lapse because the 26 others were arguing so strongly in favour. Under EU rules, an abstention does not prevent a decision from being adopted. European Council President Charles Michel heralded the move.
This is extremely important. We want to support Ukraine. It's a very powerful political signal. It's a very powerful political decision. And today and tonight, I think to the people of Ukraine, we are on their side, and this decision made by the member states is extremely important for the credibility of the European Union.
Although the process between opening negotiations and Ukraine finally becoming a member could take many years, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed the agreement. He called it a truly remarkable result for Ukraine and for the whole of Europe. The deadlock on the European financial aid comes after Ukrainian President Zelensky failed earlier this week to convince US lawmakers to approve an additional $61 billion of aid for Kyiv, mainly to buy weapons from Washington. Other main diplomatic developments at the EU summit included the EU granting candidate status to Georgia and opening accession negotiations with Moldova. Dan Rell, TV News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin held his annual press conference on Thursday in Moscow, showing no sign of backing down from the war with Ukraine. More from NBC News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin uncompromising today at a rare 4-hour question and answer session, declaring victory in Ukraine will be ours. There will be peace when we achieve our goals, he said. While tonight, Ukraine's President Zelensky claiming a victory, a surprise agreement on Ukraine's entry to the European Union. But Zelensky's failure so far to gain billions more in aid during his trip to Washington was noticed in Moscow. These freebies may end someday, and apparently they are ending little by little, Putin said. Though Russia's leader of 23 years did see some dissent on the text messages appearing on screens behind him. You said in 2004, a man may go crazy after 7 years in power, this message read. How's your health? Tonight, a veteran lawmaker who says the Ukraine conflict is at a dead end tells us he plans to run against Putin in next year's presidential election. He doesn't think he'll win.
After I have said that we should elect other president, not Putin, I was blocked on Russian TV.
Russia is on a war footing. An ice rink outside Moscow features a fighter jet and a former Soviet rocket. Millions visiting a Russian expo that includes the history of the Soviet nuclear program. This, a model of Russia's first atom bomb.
We're proud of it. It's our history. We are a great country.
More than 500 people were sent to hospital after a train accident on the Changping metro line in Beijing yesterday. Over 100 passengers suffered bone fractures, with 90 of them still hospitalized. Mainland authorities said the incident involved a breakdown, but no longer mentioned a detachment of carriages. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Large numbers of police cars could be seen stationed outside the CRT station on the Changping metro line this morning. The incidents occurred at around 7 p.m. on Thursday when a train was traveling between CRT station and Life Science Park station. Beijing metro authorities earlier said several carriages of the train were detached. At around noon today, Beijing's Municipal Transport Committee noted preliminary investigations indicated the snowfall affected the rail lines and the signaling system. The transport body said it believes the train's carriages at the back crashed into the rest of the train when it braked. It took around 4 hours for rescue personnel to evacuate all passengers on the train. 515 people were sent to hospital, with over 100 of them suffering bone fractures. The municipal government has already established an investigation team to find out more about the cause of the crash. The section between CRT and Zhuxinzhuang stations on the metro line were closed this morning. Authorities have arranged buses to provide transport for passengers stranded at the affected stations. At Zhuxinzhuang station, more than 100 people braved the cold while waiting for the bus rides at around 9 a.m. The boarding scene looked chaotic as many rushed onto the bus hoping to get to work on time. This woman said she had to be at work at 9:30 at the latest, and that it was very difficult to get onto the bus. Beijing subway authorities announced they resorted to manually driving their trains and lowering speeds to ensure safety. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
A former female employee at the Hong Kong Society for the Protection of Children pleaded guilty to another count of child abuse on Friday. The 27-year-old ex-child care worker was found guilty of assaulting and neglecting a 1-year-old boy on purpose at the children's residential home in Mong Kok, which is run by the Hong Kong Society for the Protection of Children, in December 2021. District Judge Lily Wong said, while no evidence showed the boy was injured, the defendant's action cannot be tolerated. The woman was sentenced to jail for 14 weeks. She is currently in prison for another 9 counts of child abuse. More than 30 vintage-themed food stalls participated in the opening night of the Temple Street Night Market. The scheme, organized by the Hong Kong Tourism Board, will last for half a year. Stretching across roughly 100 meters, visitors can buy some of the city's classic snacks, including curry squid and Chinese skewers. Besides local delicacies, residents can also taste international products such as Turkish coffee. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism Kevin Young also made his way to the inaugural night of Temple Street's revitalization project. Starting today, over 30 food stalls will be set up every day on the street between 2 p.m. and 11 p.m. The first pilot tour of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge hit the road today. Sakura Ip was there.
The first group of tourists arrived at the East Artificial Island at 11:15 a.m. after a 30-minute ride. A warm welcome from the bridge management and souvenirs awaited them. This couple traveled all the way from Gansu. Mr. Guo said he was moved and honored to get a first-hand look at the impressive infrastructure. Mr. Zhang received flowers as he was the first tourist aboard. He said it's worth paying $100 or $200 to visit this huge project.
We can take a closer look to the Hong Kong International Airport and the Lantau Island here via this telescope during this 80-minute visit on the artificial island.
Apart from the balcony, there's an exhibition hall on the 4th floor about the history of the bridge. The bridge's manager said the tour is a unique travel experience held in a restricted area at the border, different from any inbound or outbound tours. He believed the product would become a brand in the Greater Bay Area to attract more tourists. The travel company running the tour said it will stick with a daily quota of 1,200 visitors for the duration of its 6-month-long trial.
We will strengthen management in the future, strive to reduce operating costs and make corresponding adjustments based on change in market conditions. We will like to have more tourists to witness this project.
The tour is open to mainlanders as well as Hong Kong and Macau residents who hold home return permits. Tickets are on sale on the WeChat platform but are sold out until December 22nd. Sakura Ip, TVB News, Zhuhai.
That's the news. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.